The Kirky B Show with drummer, podcaster, Tim Baltes.
Hey, it's Kurt Pescara, the Kirky B Show. Kirky B here with the one and only Tim Baltes. My bro.
Dude, thank you so much for having me on.
Man, this is going to be fun. And for those who don't know Tim is an amazing drummer. I want to start off there. He blew my mind in terms of his drumming skills when I first saw one of his posts on Instagram. But more importantly, he is a funny dude. And if you're a follower of Tim on Instagram, oh my God, his videos are hilarious. And I'm always bugging him. I'm always texting him, hey man, TV show, flames, it's hot. I could go on and on. Hashtag Netflix, Hulu. I mean, it's that good. So if you haven't checked it out, go on Instagram and follow Tim. Which is what? What's the handle, Tim?
Timbo from Keno, Keno.
Right. I always think of the gambling game in Vegas, Keno.
Yeah, Kenosha's a little more boring than Vegas, but same name.
Right. So first of all, here we are in 2023. We're post-pandemic. We're post all these things. And as a follower of yours and a fan, I noticed a lot of your posts on both your Instagram and YouTube. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are in terms of, and I'll keep it in the drumming lane. Here we are as drummers and we're posting up all this content. How do you honestly feel about the good it's doing, or is it doing damage? Is it helping us in any way? Because there's so much content, and there's great content, there's average content, there's beginner content, which I love personally because I see people that are just starting out getting into it. But overall, how do you see this forwarding within the next 3 to 5 years?
To me, I think what's so important here is the intention behind the content and what that content creator wants, both for themselves, what they want to get out of their content, and what they want their audience to get out of their content. That whatever that effort is, that mindset is going into that content is so important. For me, what that looks like is that the internet, social media, that's only the beginning of whatever this thing is that I'm putting out into the world, whether it's a 20-minute video of me talking about an old drum brand, or a 30-second clip of me breathing really heavily into a Shrek mask trying to play death metal drums over something that doesn't need death metal drums. In either case, I don't want that content to just stay there, particularly with the funny stuff. It's a vehicle for connection. So when content can start on the internet, go into a home, and I've had not just couples connect over the content, because it's something that non-drummers can enjoy as much as drummers. Whole families can connect over my content. I'm really particular about that side of the content having typically no unfamily friendly elements to it. Don't like to use a lot of spicy language, spicy topics, and the reason is because I know kids are watching this, sharing that with their parents are watching this, sharing it with their spouses. Right. So important to me but the whole thing is that content goes from the internet and creates human connection. In the same way, that's what I'm trying to get out of it too. I've been on some short form video content platforms for almost a decade now. And for me, it's this experience of being a content creator is about going from creating the content to having conversations back and forth with people that turn into DMs, that might turn into texts and phone calls, and experiences like this right now. I mean, that's exactly how we formed the friendship that we have today.
Exactly.
And that's what it's about for me.
Yeah, I mean, I know so many amazing drummers, and that was the first two things I noticed about you was like, okay, this dude's an amazing drummer and he's funny. I'm in. And it got to the point where it's like I was enjoying your content so much. I was like, dude, I gotta DM this guy on Instagram. And you got right back to me, and I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, this guy's really cool, because sometimes I would DM and reach out or something and not hear back. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm coming off too harshly, or they're too cool for school, or whatever. It doesn't matter. But you were way cool and got right back to me. And yeah, it was just, yeah, we've never met in the flesh, but we've had many great conversations together. And yeah, that's exactly how we met.
And for me, it's you want to find the people that are right for you too. And of course, I'm going to message you back. You're a freaking living legend, so there's no doubt about that. I'll blow a little bit of smoke up your butt, but
Oh,
it's these are the things that connect us, right? You can be a drummer who's just putting out chops content, putting out content that could be polarizing or off-putting to some folks. You're going to attract a certain audience, but what kind of good are you doing in the world if maybe there isn't such a good intent behind that content? For me, it's about building community. That's what it's always been about with drummers.
right.
We're very unique, and you've said this too, is it's like for you've said that drumming is almost like being a skateboarder. At least that's a perspective it seems like you've taken to your career, and that you can be your own person, build your own thing. And in that way, some folks might think, well, that's really individualistic as far as or as opposed to being communal. But the community isn't necessarily specifically with other musicians. We think about folks who have bands and they're always working with the same group of people. For drummers, what's so interesting is that we have this tight bond with one another. A great example is a story I have that I was at the Chicago Drum Show, and for many years it was hosted in one place, came to another place that was a two-section sort of arena. And in one section of the arena, you had the vintage drum show. The other section of the arena, you had the vintage guitar show. On the drum side, I had to leave there because, of course, I'm filling my car with drums, and I needed some extra cash at the ATM, which was on the guitar side. So as I'm leaving the drum side, I hear the roar of drums, drummers having a great time, laughter, conversation, all of these things. And as I get onto the guitar side, everybody's like looking at their feet. No one is talking to one another. It was stark, dude. It was really bizarre. But that says everything that you need to say about the difference between drummers and other musicians, is that we love the craft of doing this thing, the drums themselves so often, and talking about these things and forming relationships over this shared interest, much more so than other instrumentalists. So even though we might seem from the outside that we might be siloed in the way that we, me as a content creator, you in the approach that you've taken to being everybody's drummer at the top level. But it's truly the opposite. And that's why I think moving forward with the content stuff, the creators, I hope, that are going to win in the future are those who choose to build community with good intention, whatever that means. Now, today, do we still, in my opinion, see some content creators in the drum space with hundreds of thousands of followers who are putting out messages that may not seem sincere, who get off of these platforms and get into real life and really aren't the greatest type of person? Yeah, sure. I mean, we're going to see that everywhere. But because people, I think, have seen social media for so long and have seen such a bad side of it oftentimes when it comes to some of the worst of, events on a societal level that we've seen the last 3-5 years. I really think and hope that it's going to be the folks who do this, who build community inside and outside of the internet, who are going to win. And I think that'll make social media content in general a better thing for all of us in any sphere.
Yeah, that's interesting. You use the word community. I had a conversation yesterday with a dear friend of mine who's a guitar player who creates content, and he was talking about a few of his colleagues that do the same thing, and how they're so busy and so successful in making content that now it's flipped over to the other side where they're turning down live gigs, and they're turning down going out to play live in a club, or maybe even take a short tour because they're so busy creating content. I immediately went, danger, Will Robinson, danger. It was kind of like, God, are we going to get into this space of where we're creating all this content and then we're going to be missing out on the live experience? And I feel like we're in murky ground right now, because we're all trying to create content. We're all trying to do stuff on the internet. And yes, the world has changed, and traveling and things like that are a little more difficult than usual. But yeah, I'm afraid for the live performance aspect of music when I heard that. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I like to think of it like this: is when you were growing up and entering your career, what was interesting about music is I think it was a platform in which your skill as a musician, as a drummer, was a skill that could help you enable you to get social mobility. For you to walk into a room, somebody took a chance on you, and one gig led to another, and all of a sudden you're playing for the biggest names in the world. And so you go from, a kid to the top.
Right. But
now,
without those chances, though, I mean, those chances were done in a live setting in a room full of people, not just the artists themselves, but their management company, the decision makers, the check writers, those people. And I feel like there's that one instance removed that the people that have the power to hire you or to use your services won't have that opportunity. And again, that's just my old school way of thought. But on the new school part, I'm thinking, well, God, not only does this reach millions of people on the internet, but there's that thing of like, you shake hands with somebody and say, oh, hey, nice meeting you. And they even hold a conversation. What are they like as a human being? That's the other half of it, right?
And that is half of it, right? Because I've met plenty of people who have hundreds of thousands, upwards of 1 million followers across all these different platforms, and it's really an odd experience meeting them in public. They really aren't the same person that they're performing as online. And I perform as a character, especially in the comic stuff online. It's not to say that bit of being a character isn't there, but if you're getting to the live thing, being in a room with someone, that part's important to the live experience itself. But to get back to this point is that for me, the social mobility thing is online right now. And so it's a tool. I mean, look at this is a great example in my own life. Going online and posting little Instagram videos, even just covers of my favorite songs. That was a way for me to get remote recording jobs with Disney, Warner Records, you name it, Grammy award-winning soundtracks, all because I was posting little videos on Instagram. That, in turn, did allow me to get back to the live thing. Before I got really sick, I was out on the West Coast. I was at NAMM. People were, I was able to talk to some of these industry professionals who I had no clue they knew who I was. taking pictures, kissing babies. It was really a bizarre experience to get out of the basement and see, oh, these videos really do have an impact in the real world, and to go and spend time in Portland, Oregon, and perform to a sold out room at the 10th anniversary of Revival Drum Shop, the show they did at Mississippi Studios. And so it went from online into the real world. That's the path I think that you need to take now, is to the online. You can build the platform which enables you to go out into the real world. And I'd like to think that's the future as well. For me, I'm not just focusing so much locally, but totally abroad now, and building relationships all over the world, because that's the opportunity I have now. So the goal is start to plant the seeds of these relationships online, whether it's with a consumer or a brand, a manufacturer, a distributor, or a retailer of these musical instruments. In either case, I'm getting paid. With consumers, it's generally with their time, which is worth a lot, and with the other side of it, hopefully it is with money. Sometimes with gear, but hopefully with money. So yeah, I guess I hope that answers the question of basically that's the goal. Start online, move it to the real world. If it just stays online, I understand some folks with social anxiety, maybe that is the path that they need to take. And it's not to say I don't have that too. That's why I really enjoy playing in the most comfortable place I have to play drums, right here in the basement. But I also enjoy getting out there, spending time at the Chicago Drum Show, at NAMM, at these performances I've done with the people who care about me and the content I make, because it's rewarding, man. It can get real lonely in the basement real quick, because you don't see that your content is making a difference. But when someone DMs you, when you get out in the real world and they say, man, that video you did, that podcast you did, whatever, made a difference in my life, makes it all so real. And so I think that's the path.
Well, you said a four-letter word just moments ago, NAMM. Do you see a future moving forward with NAMM? Because it seems like, I mean, when I was coming up, that was the end-all be-all. That was the point in time at the beginning of the year that every musician of all ilks, styles, we all showed up, and that was the place to be, to meet, to wink and gun, to do all that. But now, because of the internet, I personally think that NAMM could be over.
I agree. I totally agree. I think for me, it's kind of the way other industries are or have been. Think about how the music industry has changed over your career. It's almost like it becomes there are more little corners instead of being one main avenue, more little cul-de-sacs instead of one main avenue. And I mentioned them only because I know that a lot of the majors for the past couple of years, yes, I know that COVID was a big play in it, but a lot of them pulled out and did not show. And I thought, and that was of all instruments, all the major name instrument companies, they did not show, and they weren't on the floor. And I just thought, God, maybe it's just better to view all the new product online, watch it on YouTube, go to a music store that may carry it, that may have it on the floor to demo it. I don't know. It just, to go pay for a hotel and drive all the way to Anaheim, which is easy for me, but for someone like you got to get on a plane, and it's costly. Look at, I think there was a huge lesson learned in the last 3 years for manufacturers and distributors alike. And that is ad dollars can be much more effectively spent online than at a trade show like that. You can bring in an outside production team to make YouTube videos that now you own forever, and you can cut them up and reuse them here, there, the other place. The other part is you can spend those ad dollars with someone like me, a creator who has relationships with consumers and has a level of credibility, so that when I give an honest review on something, someone's going to be able to make a real informed decision, understand that, I mean, there's subjectivity to anybody's point of view, but there's a certain objectivity to the perspective that I try to put into the world about gear. And so when, you spend whatever, say you have an ad spend of $1,500 on a campaign, and $500 is in the gear itself that goes out to the person, the creator, and they get $1,000 on top of that. That $1,500 with the right creator could turn into $100K worth of sales for that manufacturer. Whereas $1,500 is going to get you literally nothing at NAMM. Now, the flip side is those manufacturers who depend on NAMM as the platform or the event to better connect with their dealers. Now you have to figure out what you're going to do on that end. So many manufacturers, this, for a long time, had independent outside sales reps, and drums at least. And so you'd have a guy who would rep a drum company, a cymbal company, this, that, and the other. He'd physically come to your store, talk about your needs, help you walk through what are the latest, greatest, what's selling the best, how do I do better in this store. None of that exists anymore. So much of it's inside. So
much of it is mail order, Sweetwater, all the major online music stores.
Yeah, it's the same way as these other industries as far as retail has gone, in that
Amazon.
You have to be giant to win. Even farming, you can't have a little hobby farm, well, for the most part anymore, and really make a killing. You have to be giant aggro. And it's the same in drums. You have to go through Sweetwater as a manufacturer. You have to go through Sweetwater as a consumer, because that's where it's at. On the flip side, if we want to go back to aggro and the relationship between that type of industry and drums, if you can have a real interesting niche as a brick and mortar, go back to Revival Drum Shop. There's a perfect example. The community is there that they've built. They have a customer base locally and abroad who support that store heavily.
Yeah.
And so that can work, but it's such a niche thing. There are so many other stores who have popped up who have tried to do it. Some are successful. Nelson Drum Shop in Nashville is a perfect example. It's in a music city. It's run by folks who have lived in that city for a long time, who have trust with the other drummers in the city, the same way Revival has, and so it can flourish. Now, you can't necessarily do that everywhere. You can't do that in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and necessarily depend on a local base of drummers to support a store like that. You have to think, e-com then. But that's the same as content creation, is you have to get creative with this. The same way that I'm in Kenosha and building a career online, whether you're a retailer or a manufacturer, then you have to think, if you're going to base yourself in a small town like this, you have to think online. So there's so much that goes into this, man.
Right.
So much.
God, I think you covered a lot of ground here with the business aspect of what you do in terms of the new modern drummer. I mean, if there's a tag here, it'd definitely be the new modern drummer, because in order to be a drummer these days, you do have to wear all these hats. You have to be a content creator. You have to understand the business point of view. You have to understand how to operate a camera, how to get proper audio, how to record yourself. There are so many hats now, and which you brilliantly show online. But moving forward, and as we're wrapping up, let's get to the fun stuff. You're a great drummer. You play amazing drums. We see all your Ludwig kits and your North kits and all those amazing kits. Of all those kits that you have in your basement there that I see that are in that rack there with all those cool front drum heads and stuff like that, Is there any particular company that you actually endorse, or are you a freelance drummer in terms of gear?
And this goes right back to the question of how do you form a modern career in music? And I'm lucky enough to have a day job, and then I'm able to pick and choose the work that I do days and nights with the music stuff, which I think is a very it can be a much more rewarding way to form a career in music. I don't necessarily endorse endorsements. I endorse relationships. Today I formally endorse Diodario, so I'm formally using Evans, ProMark, and Pure Sound, all the accessories. But I have relationships with Ludwig Drums. I've got relationships with Franklin Drums up in Minneapolis, several other small manufacturers around the country. And so in that way, I'm able to use all of these relationships to help bolster what I'm doing here, whether that's creating content, bolstering some of the product development work I've done, or the branding work I've done. So yeah, I'm a huge advocate for, in the same way that I think in a sort of new school way, if you will, about content, I try to think in a new school way about building a career. And some of these things don't have to be about music either. Like I was just talking to Dylan Wissing this morning. That's the dude who played, he made the samples for Girl on Fire by Alicia Keys. He's played with drums on Kanye West tracks, tons of huge hip hop and pop tracks. And this dude was telling me, he's like, sometimes I'm building out studios for producers, doing the construction part of it. Sometimes he's picking up dog poop if the money's right. Like what's silly.
So it is truly about the multiple hat theory.
Yeah, and just like staying real, like I know drummers who will not do anything for work but drumming. And I get it. I understand that pride, and but for me, as someone who's had to be creative in the way that I've built a career, I also think that it's very valid to be a professional musician who works a day job. I'm still getting paid to play drums. I'm still getting paid to work on drum related efforts for manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. I think that's enough. And so if we reframe the way that we look at all of this stuff as a drummer, work, music, all of it, I think that we can find that it will be less stressful in trying to build whatever you're trying to build. And ultimately, I'd like to think this can be more fulfilling with a little bit of creativity in the way that you build things.
Well, Tim, I love your outlook on this, because in moving forward, I mean, for an old dog like me, I think that is the way. I was talking to my dear friend Vinny Caliuta the other day, and we were talking about this. And we were talking about how we both came up recording on 2-inch tape, and all of the machinations thereof. Drum machines, and the Wendell, which was a time corrector, pre digital. And so we were just having this open conversation. And what you're saying and what I'm hearing you say just makes so much sense. Makes so much sense moving forward, because we are dealing with technology now in the highest manner. And I think what you're saying, it makes sense to me, and it does take an open mind for someone who's been doing it now for 40 years, and moving forward. It's like, okay, Mick Jagger, he's 80 years old. Elton John's retiring. Yeah, those are people I've worked with. Great, that's wonderful. But looking forward, it's like, okay, how can I apply all that knowledge that I had to the now? And I'm talking to one of the guys that are you're firing the trail, my friend. And
thank you.
So, And that was one of the reasons why I love following you and watching you, because I see and hear and witness what you're doing and exactly what you're saying and moving forward and not just being a professional drummer, but being able to do other things and broaden the perspective, if you will.
Yeah.
And on that note, my friend, I just want to say thank you so much for doing the Kirkby Show. And please, if we want to follow you, if we want to watch you, if we want to laugh, if we want to cry, how do we get to Tim Baltes?
Timland, man. Yeah, dude, thank you so much for all the kind words, having me on here. This has been a pleasure. And if anybody wants to find me, Tim Baltes, BALTES.com. Timbo from Kino on most of the socials, YouTube and Instagram are the biggies. And hope to catch you all online or in the real world.
Yes. And Tim, this isn't the last time we're going to do this, because you are a plethora of infos. So we'll do it again, my friend.
Sounds
and
good.
Thank you again for doing the Kirkby Show. It's Kirkby. I'm out. Thank you for watching. Much love.